Hello, it's Reverend Tony here. I hope you've all had a good Easter holiday and that you're glad to be back at school. I'm very glad to be sharing this collective worship assembly with you today, and I'm really looking forward, hopefully, to coming into school before very long, actually to see you all in person. Now, look at these lovely spring flowers here. Spring is always a time of great hope when we think about new life, and we'll have a look to see what's under here in just a moment. But first of all, we begin with our opening responses. God is love, all the time. All the time, God is love. Well, shall we look under here and see what we've got? A display of Easter eggs. Well, some real eggs there, but then some Easter eggs here and some other eggs down there. I wonder if you've got any eggs left over after Easter. These are not all mine. Some of them are still to be given to other people, but I enjoy eating eggs at Easter, both real eggs and chocolate eggs. Now, I want just to remind us of what we thought about at the end of last term. Do you remember I made these lanterns and we thought about the last days of Jesus' life, how he went into the city of Jerusalem on a donkey, and then people waved palm branches, and then he met with his friends for the Last Supper, and then they had shared bread and wine together. And after that, Jesus was arrested and he was made to carry his cross, and he was put to death on a cross with two other people. That was the main part of what we got to at the end of last term. But I just gave you a hint of something even greater. A hint that Jesus would rise again from the dead, and we saw that in the picture there. So let me tell you briefly the story from the Bible. On the first Easter morning, some women went to the tomb where Jesus had been laid. After he had died, they were carrying some spices to anoint his body. And when they got there, they discovered that the big stone that covered the tomb had been rolled away from the tomb, and the tomb was empty. There was no body inside. They were amazed and perplexed at that. What's going on, they thought. But then they met someone, and Mary, one of the women, thought it was the gardener. But it wasn't the gardener, it was Jesus himself. Jesus had come back to life. He was no longer dead, he was alive. And he showed himself later on that day to the other disciples, and he showed them his hands and his feet and his side that had been marked with the nails and the spear. There was no doubt he really was alive. And that's what Christians celebrate, not just on Easter Day, but forever. Because if Jesus has broken the power of death, Jesus is with us now, and he can be with us every day of our lives, not just on Easter Day. That's one of the reasons why it's great to have these Easter eggs, not just to eat on Easter Day, but to enjoy in the days after Easter. So why do we have eggs at Easter? I think there are three reasons. The first reason is about real eggs. If I get this real egg out of here. If this hadn't been picked up, if a hen had sat on it until it hatched, then a chick would have come out of it. Eggs are a sign of new life, of new hope, of new birth, of something new coming out of something ordinary. That's the first reason. The second reason is that for some people, the inside of a hollow egg looks as though it's a bit like the tomb that Jesus was laid in. Let's have a look in this one and see what we can find. Here we are, a nice chocolate egg, and if I unwrap that carefully, you will be able to see that it is hollow inside, a bit like the tomb where Jesus was laid. There was nothing there. And the third reason that we have eggs is because many people in the run-up to Easter, during the season of Lent, give up things like red meat and fatty foods and eggs. And so at Easter, when we celebrate the good news of Jesus coming alive, it's a good time for eating eggs and remembering that Jesus is always with us. There's just one other thing to say before we go any further, and that is on the side of this box it says, "Help change the world." And part of the reason for that is because these eggs are fair trade eggs. You can see from the logo on there that they're fairly traded, so they make sure that the chocolate producers in other parts of the world get fair wages for their work, and they get paid a bit extra so that their families can live a better standard of living. So that's one of the reasons why Easter enables us to help change the world. But the other reason, of course, is because we know that Jesus is always with us, and we can go out and show his love and his care for all people. Now you might say that's all very well, but how do we know that Jesus rose from the dead? This half-term I'm thinking about two particular Christian values, trust and wisdom. Trust means trusting what someone has said or trusting in a person. Wisdom, what does that mean? Well, part of what that means is knowing who or what to trust. We're always told, for instance, that you shouldn't go with strangers, and that's very sensible, that's quite obvious. But it's not always clear who we should believe and who we should trust. Christians over many, many years have believed the Bible account that Jesus really did rise from the dead. And for me personally, there's no other explanation as to why the tomb was empty and why the first disciples went round telling everyone that Jesus has risen from the dead, and why the faith has lasted for over 2,000 years. So for me, the wisdom comes from trusting the experience of the Bible, the experience of Christians down the years, and the experience today of knowing God's love and peace and hope in our hearts. And I'm well aware that our Muslim friends are beginning their special time of Ramadan this week, and so I pray that they too may know God's blessing as they go through this period of fasting, going without food during the day, and that they may know God's love and blessing with them too. So I pray that we will all have wisdom to know who to trust in our lives, and I pray that we will grow in that trust that we have for others. We'll have our song now, a lovely Easter song that picks up the themes of the Easter story, and then I'll say a prayer. Lord, we thank you for this new term. We thank you for being back in school again with our friends. We thank you for all that we can learn together over the coming weeks. Help us all to grow in wisdom. Help us all to know who to trust, what to trust, and how to put our trust in you. Be with us and help us today and every day, that we may show your love, that we may share hope and joy with all the people around us. Amen. We finish with our closing responses. God is love, all the time. All the time, God is love. Go and show that love to everyone you meet. Amen. Well, I'll look forward to being with you again next week, either on the video or maybe even in person. Until then, stay safe and God bless.